there everyone, this is Dan Dix here reporting for Press for Truth, and today I'm sad to say that what's currently going on in Ferguson right now is just a sample of what we can expect to come. Now, the American police have shot another man. Michael Brown was killed in Ferguson, Missouri by a local police officer, and the response to the slaying of another black man has been massive civil disobedience. Now, at this point, whether he's black or white, innocent or guilty is irrelevant. In a free society, one is equal under the law and innocent until proven guilty by a court of law. But of course, how it works on paper does not match up with reality. Lately, police have been in the business of shooting first and asking questions later. Now, there is a concentrated effort to morph America's local and city police into a highly centralized paramilitary outfit. In response to civil unrest, the police are out in full force right now, showing off their military equipment. These are not pictures from Gaza or the Ukraine. This is just south of the 49th. And as we have shown earlier, this could have been the Niagara region of Ontario, Canada. Or as this picture with Peter MacKay illustrates, the cops are fully equipped to combat civil disorder here in Canada. Now, Canadian police forces have had their trigger-happy moments before. Remember 18-year-old Sammy Yadam, who was murdered by a Toronto police officer? Well, that officer was suspended with pay. And the history of the RCMP isn't something to gloat about either. Despite their rosy image as Dudley Do-Right patriotic heroes, we have to remember that they are in fact the federal police force that once dispersed and murdered First Nation communities in order to protect railroad construction and financial interests. They also rounded up innocent Japanese and put them into concentration camps. And now they're allowing US agents to exercise authority right here in Canada. A perfect example is the case with Mark Emery. The self-proclaimed Prince of Pot was extradited to the USA thanks to an effort by Liberal Justice Minister Irwin Cotler and the American DEA. His crime was that he was selling cannabis seeds, which is legal here in Canada, to US customers. Well, now that Mark is free and back in Vancouver, the DEA has admitted that he was indeed a political prisoner. And Canada and the United States are supposed to be free countries anyways, so the term political prisoner, well, shouldn't even exist. Now, under the Harper government's omnibus budget bill B38, there's a program called ShipRider that was introduced. Now, ShipRider recognizes US agents as a legitimate police force in Canada. RCMP Chief Superintendent Joe Oliver told the Senate Committee on National Security and Defense, "We recognized early that this approach would raise concerns about sovereignty, of privacy, and civil liberties of Canadians. We said, let's take baby steps. Let's start with 2 agencies to test the concept. Let's demonstrate to Canadians and Americans that such an approach might work." Well, the first baby steps have been taken in Canadian waters. According to the RCMP website, Canadians need to be aware that if they are approached by a United States Coast Guard vessel in Canadian waters, they need to comply with their request as they would with an RCMP vessel. Now, the next step is over land, and it's likely that the FBI will have the same authority as the RCMP here on Canadian soil. That is, if they don't already. And these initiatives are part of a larger trend that's blending American and Canadian police enforcements and bureaucracies, and really it just amounts to another step towards a North American Union. Now, we've already seen a Canadian city under siege this summer after Justin Bourque shot and killed 3 RCMP officers. The city of Moncton, New Brunswick was under lockdown. The heavily armed police force deployed armored vehicles, snipers, helicopters, and even a robot to find the gunman, who ended up surrendering voluntarily. Now, this wasn't the first time that the New Brunswick RCMP brought out its military gear. The clash between the Mi'kmaq protesters and the RCMP, of course along with a little help from private police friends late last year, was another sign of the times. Now, there is a blurred line between the Canadian Armed Forces and the RCMP, and even with the regional police forces, like the United States, Canada is militarizing its police. Now, we here at PFT know this all too well, having documented the globalist occupation in 2010 at the Toronto G20. Cougar tanks were transferred by the Canadian Armed Forces to local municipal police and RCMP forces. New Glasgow, Nova Scotia got this tank that was previously used in the Balkans and Somalia. In British Columbia, the RCMP uses their tanks in street parades, just like in the old Soviet Union or current-day North Korea. Now, while the RCMP were retroactively banning guns that look threatening, the Montreal police were busy acquiring 18,000 sound cannons that blast noise at protesters. Noise that's so loud it's like standing next to a jet engine. This weapon, called the Long-Range Acoustic Device, was developed by the military-industrial complex to fight Somali pirates in Yemen. Yeah, I guess the Montreal protesters are just as dangerous as pirates. And no, not internet pirates, we're talking about real pirates, like with boats. So back in 2010, the Toronto police were eager to use these sonic weapons on G20 protesters, but the Ontario Superior Court ruled that it couldn't be used. So fortunately, there are some degrees of civil liberties that still exist here in Canada, which is why it is incredibly important to get this information out there. Already there is a litmus test for the American military. What will it take for American troops to shoot American citizens? Well, probably not much, and the odds of shooting Canadians first are probably higher. Will Canadians shoot other Canadians? Well, again, hopefully not. But unless the masses realize what's taking place, our only hope right now is that there are still good men and women in uniform who are willing to disobey their orders. The militarization of our police is a slippery slope that doesn't lead anywhere good. Show me one example in history where people lost their rights due to an existential threat like terrorism, and where the police became more militarized but everything worked out fine. You just go ahead and try to show me one example. I don't think you'll find it. And that's because it doesn't exist. Every single time humanity goes down this path, it results in tyranny. Now, there are already holding camps in Canada. Suffield CFB, just north of Medicine Hat, less than 60 miles from the USA, and Wainwright CFB, which is halfway between Medicine Hat and Primrose Lake. Both are located in Alberta, but I'm sure there are more. All of this is despite the fact that violent crimes have been steadily decreasing. Well, unless of course you mean violent crimes by the state. That has been steadily increasing with more bombings overseas and of course this shoot-to-kill policy by the police. And not to mention the liberal use of tasers and closed-circuit televisions, tear gas, which is banned in war, but apparently it's okay to use on domestic populations, and other equipment and tactics that basically make the police look and act like soldiers. The US Army admits that they are prepared for full-scale riots in the United States. The military is equipped to engage in lethal response, even for non-violent protests that address specific issues. Use of snipers is being encouraged as well. So should we assume that Canada has similar plans in place? Well, of all countries, Canada may be the most vulnerable to the dollar's collapse, after America, of course, because any opinion that doesn't call for more government intervention is increasingly being perceived here as domestic terrorism, as we've seen highlighted in the MIAC report, or the fact that the Canadian Free Man movement is now being targeted by the FBI. Now, the founding principles of both the United States and Canada are now ideologies of the enemy, us. Self-ownership, private property, and freedom of speech are all under threat by our own governments. Now, this is not a problem that can be solved by kicking out Stephen Harper, Canada's Bush, and replacing it with Justin Trudeau, which is Canada's Barack Obama. So as these events in Ferguson unfold, it's best to remember just how militarized Canadian cops are as well, and how under NAU legislation, all of this has essentially merged the two forces together. Remember that when the dollar crashes and more cities erupt into riots and protests. Remember that when you hear about the Ferguson police who are arresting and tear gassing, shooting rubber bullets at investigative journalists. Not just the independent media, of course, they're also targeting anyone out there with a camera. It seems the only media approved by the state are the ones who are cheering on this violent regime. So does this feel like Nazi Germany yet? How about Stalinist Russia? No? Well, don't worry guys, we are, sad to say, almost there. So thanks for tuning in, folks. Be sure to stay tuned to our Twitter, our Instagram, and Facebook for more updates, and we'll have more videos coming soon to pressfortruth.ca.